Spyro the Dragon series is easily the most important gaming franchise to me. I started playing the games as early as 3 years old, Spyro 3 in particular being the first game I ever played, and also my earliest memory. So needless to say, I kind of love this series. And as biased as this may sound, they've always stuck out to me as perfect starting points in gaming. Because not only do they appeal to little kids in that they have really colorful and magical worlds, fun characters, all that stuff, they're also relatively easy to beat. So again, I think they're pretty great introduction games. I've been wanting to do YouTube for quite a while now, and Spyro was always going to be the first thing I do, so I'm going to be marathoning not only the original trilogy, but also Enter the Dragonfly and A Hero's Tale. And believe it or not, the recently announced Spyro Reignited trilogy has nothing to do with this video. It's a pretty big coincidence. Trust me, I'm very excited about that. And that being said, I should make it clear, in case you couldn't tell, I am pretty nostalgic towards these games, so if I come off as nostalgia blinded at any point, which is a very real possibility, I apologize in advance. I'm going to try to look at these games in the most objective way possible. Whether or not it'll be successful is up to you. Either way, let's get on with it.
Insomniac Games before Spyro were really only known for Disruptor, a Doom clone, though well received didn't do too well. Probably because there were so many of those at the time. They decided to create a 3D platformer as they felt outside of Crash Bandicoot. There weren't too many of those on the PS1. They settled making one about a dragon due to one of the developers' love for the mythical creature. Finally, after a year-long development cycle, the game released on September 9th, 1998 and was very well received.
Of course that was 1998, and what might have been considered amazing then might be considered aged now. So how well does Spyro 1 hold up?
The game begins with some dragons giving an interview in the State of the Dragon Realms, the location where they reside. I'm not really sure how they're giving an interview. There's a boom mic, so I would assume it's on TV, but you never actually see a TV in the game. The leader of the Gnorcs, Nasty Gnorc, or Gnasty Gnorc, comes into question.
I'll take that question. Nasty Gnorc is a simple creature. Simple! He has been contained in a remote world and is no threat to the Dragon Kingdom. No threat! Besides, he is ugly.
Nasty Gnorc overhears their insults over his TV and decides to immediately take action by crystallizing every dragon in the Dragon Realms, except for one small dragon, Spyro.
Looks like I got some things to do.
I would assume Nasty Gnorc missed Spyro due to Spyro's small size. As far as I know, the game or any outside source never actually state this, but it makes sense to me, so whatever. Gnasty Gnorc also steals all the dragon's treasure and eggs, and Spyro must reclaim all the lost goods and free all of the dragons. It's a simple story, but it's a platformer, and that's pretty much what I'd expect. I'll commend it for being original. It's not just, oh no, Blink has kidnapped X. I just wish they explained things a bit better. They never really show Nasty Gnorc stealing anything, they kinda just say he did. Either way, this is not a game you play for the story. Throughout the game, you'll be exploring 6 worlds: Artisans, Peacekeepers, Magic Crafters, Beastmakers, Dreamweavers, and finally, Gnasty's world. Each one of them has 3 levels, a flight level and a boss, with the exception of Gnasty's world, which lacks a flight level. I adore the levels in this game. They all have this magic feeling to them, both literally and figuratively. To me, it's mostly the colors they use in the medieval fantasy scenery. My favorite is probably Magic Crafters, mostly because of these wizard guys. They like moving around platforms or other terrain and make life harder for you. It provides for some pretty interesting platforming, and once you get close to them, they start flailing their arms while screaming and running in circles. Beautiful. They aren't even the only enemies that do that either. There's some Gnorcs and Peacekeepers that run away from you and hide in tents, and once you burn their tents, they moon you. I even caught one enemy killing another at one point. I didn't even know that could happen. To add to that magical feeling I mentioned is the music. The soundtrack was composed by Stuart Copeland, the drummer from the band The Police. The music has this very distinct sound to it. It's made up of synthesized instruments. It's a bit hard to explain what it sounds like, especially because I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to music, so I'll just play some of this game's music to demonstrate.
fun part of the process is being able to be in there like this, and I get a phone call and I can shout at my staff, "Don't interrupt me when I'm working!"
It kind of reminds me of Splatoon's or Jet Set Radio soundtrack, how those games also have a very distinct sound to them. You know how when you first hear an inkling singing noises, you'll go, "Oh yeah, that's Splatoon," even if you've never heard the song before. Spyro's instrumentation is very similar to that, and it does this while keeping every song sounding different. However, despite my praise, I'm not too big on the actual music itself. I love it for being so different, but to me at least, it just makes for some nice background noise. I definitely have quite the unpopular opinion on this, so take what I said with a grain of salt. I will say the main theme and Dark Hollow are the exception to this. I love those songs, I couldn't really explain why though. The actual gameplay isn't too far off from something like Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie, as in it's a 3D platformer collectathon. You run around, jump, collect gems, and save dragons, except you get all the abilities that would come from a young dragon. Spyro can't quite fly yet, but he can glide. Gliding is one of my favorite things about this game. It allows for some pretty cool level design where they have you glide into an area that you wouldn't think you can go to. Some of these places you'd think is just part of the background. Nope. There's actual level design with things to collect. They also have some pretty cool secrets where you need to glide around a corner. They may be tricky to find, but they feel pretty satisfying once you do. You can also drop or charge out of a glide if necessary. You can roll. It's not very useful and it's only in this game, but you can do it. Recording this review is actually the first time I ever really tried finding a use for it. I dodge rolled out of the way of one of the bosses. Yeah, I could have just walked or jumped out of the way, but that's not the point. I do, however, enjoy holding the button down to roll over and over. Again, not useful, but it's fun. There's also charging, which I absolutely love. It allows you to go so much faster while sacrificing a bit of control. The reason I love this so much is it brings a sense of flow that you don't typically see in this type of game. You can even jump while charging too, and that makes Spyro just that much more fun to control. You can even use it as an attack. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to destroy a line of chests or enemies. Of course, as a dragon, Spyro can also breathe fire. It's great if you want a little more range to your offense, or if you want or need to light something on fire. You actually have to use both of these attacks if you want to take out any enemy in the game. Small enemies can be taken out either way unless they have armor, in which case fire won't do anything to them, you'll have to charge them. Larger enemies can only be taken out with fire, as Spyro is too small to charge into them. Of course, with any game with enemies, you'll inevitably take damage. Unlike a lot of games, Spyro doesn't have a traditional health bar, instead he has a little buddy following him around, Sparks the Dragonfly. Think of Aku Aku from Crash Bandicoot. When Spyro gets hit, Sparks will protect him. Sparks' color indicates how much health you have. He's yellow when at full health, then blue, then green, and after that, he's gone. You'll still be alive until you get hit again. However, you really don't want to be in this state. Outside of the obvious, death, picking up gems is much more annoying without Sparks, since he also picks up any nearby gems, meaning you'll have to manually pick them up. I always really like this mechanic. I've always been a big fan of games that give you important info in the game itself, rather than the HUD, like Tax Feather attacking the power of Juju, or the Proton Packs in the Ghostbusters game on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. It's made even better that they give you a bigger incentive to stay at full health, outside of just staying alive. You recover health by feeding Sparks.
Lots of butterflies.
How do you get these butterflies? By killing small innocent creatures and feasting on the butterfly that resides in them. Yeah. Throughout the game, you'll find something called fodder, the innocent creatures I mentioned. They can be sheep, bats, lizards, or sentient mushrooms. And once you kill one of them, a butterfly will come out and Sparks will eat it and restore 1 hit point. They like to scatter them pretty evenly, so I don't think dying through health loss should be too frequent. You'll most likely die by falling down pits, especially in a certain level, which I'll definitely get into later. Spyro is once again fun to control. His jumping and overall movement feel pretty good, though charging on hills can be a bit weird. The uneven terrain likes to mess with Spyro's trajectory. Walking off an edge also eliminates any control you had on the way down. Not a big deal, but it is pretty weird. Aside from these small gripes, I think Spyro controls pretty well. If you know early 3D platformers from the late 90s, you know they are notoriously known to have crap cameras, even the best ones like Super Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot. Through witchcraft, Spyro is the exception. I never had the camera get caught on anything for more than half a second, and you have complete control over it for 100% of the time, unlike Mario 64 where it refuses to let you turn the camera around at certain points. However, one sticking point to some is that you can't use the right analog stick to control it, since the game was meant to be played on both a DualShock and the original analog stickless PS1 controller. You have to use the shoulder buttons to move it left or right. I actually prefer this, at least with Spyro's basic camera. Using the right analog stick for a camera control is great, but I don't like having to hop my right thumb from the 4 phase buttons to the stick. It's a fine sacrifice for the degree of control you're getting, but for Spyro's basic camera control where you can only move it left or right, I do think the shoulder buttons are better, since you can still do any move you want while moving the camera without holding the controller in an awkward way. The graphics are another thing that hold up shockingly well. Spyro's model is pretty detailed for the time, and the character animations and the cutscenes are pretty good. Texture quality is pretty nice in detail, and probably the most impressive part is the draw distance. A lot of games on the PS1 had crap draw distances, and they had to disguise it using fog, making for some pretty ugly and dated looking games. Spyro fixed this by introducing a level of detail. Basically, when parts of the level are far off in the distance, it'll lose polygons and the textures will become flat colors, a much better alternative to fog. This technique is still being used to this day, specifically in open world games, obviously to a much smaller and less noticeable degree. Another thing that I love regarding the draw distance is the gems. A problem this genre had due to hardware limitations is the draw distance on collectibles. If you're even a little too far, any collectibles won't show up, making collecting things much more annoying than it should be. Spyro still technically has this problem, but they kind of fixed it. Gems will still disappear if you're too far, but their glimmer won't. Even if a gem hasn't loaded in and you can't see it, you'll at least see the gem's glimmer, so you'll know where it is, essentially solving this issue. The power stars of this game are the dragons. There's a total of 80 of them, and you're going to need most of them. Whenever you release one, they'll typically give you some kind of tip. That's fine, but not all of them are useful. There's one that teaches you about fairy kisses giving you super flame, but you need to use super flame to destroy the door that's blocking the way. There's also a dragon that makes a Parappa the Rapper reference.
Wow! I never thought I'd be rescued, especially by such a little dragon. What I mean is, I always believed in you, Spyro.
You gotta believe!
By far, the most common phrase you'll hear is, "Thank you for releasing me."
Thank you for releasing me.
Thank you for releasing me!
Thank you for releasing me. Oh, thank you for releasing me.
Thank you for releasing me.
Thanks for releasing me. Thank you for releasing me.
Thank you for releasing me.
Thank you for releasing me.
And probably my favorite,
Thank you for releasing me!
I love this one. He has such an awesome name and he looks so cool. But then when he appears, he's on all fours and has the wittiest voice I've ever heard.
Speaking of the voice acting, I think it's pretty solid. I believe about 5 guys voiced every dragon in the game, one of which is Clancy Brown, you know, Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob. Spyro himself is voiced by Carlos Alazraqui, who's known to play Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life. Wow, we have all the Nickelodeon tie-ins today. Stuart Copeland also made some music for The Amanda Show. He even reused a song for Wizard's Peak for that show's credits. Anyway, I think Carlos Alazraqui did a pretty solid job. Spyro's a bit nasally, but he's pretty young, so it makes sense. I don't think he's the best Spyro, that would be Tom Kenny, but I still do appreciate his performance. Throughout the game, you'll collect loads of gems. You'll need these for progression. There's gems of different colors. Each color is worth a different amount. Red gems are worth 1, green are 2, blue are 5, yellow are 10, and purple are 25. There's even bouncing numbers that spawn when you collect them. It's a small detail I always liked. Collecting them can be fun. I just hate the occasional time where I'm missing literally 1 gem. Scouring the level until you find it can be very, very tedious. You don't need every gem, but come on, man. You gotta get that 100%. To be fair, this is a problem with the Collectathon genre as a whole. Thankfully, the sequel has introduced the Gem Finder ability, which fixes this issue. You can also find gems laying around in various types of chests. My favorite type of chest is probably the strong chest. To break these, you'll either have to find a nearby rocket to light it aflame, so it can fly there in a cartoony fashion, or you'll have to use the supercharge ramp. Supercharging is great. It's basically a much faster and more potent charge. With the supercharge, they'll have you destroying strong chests or do a lot of huge jumps. Some levels like the high caves are Treetops are entirely designed around this concept, the former being a fun, low-risk stage and the latter being the biggest life drainer of a stage in this series. This stage is full of ramps and is comprised of mostly pits. Even has this ridiculous jump where you need to jump from ramp to ramp. It's not that hard to do once you know how to do it, but I've been using an easier method for a while now, so I kind of forgot how, and I had to look it up. I actually had to go out of my way to re-record Treetops just for that one jump. It's still a fun stage, but it's a huge difficulty spike. A more infamous collectible are dragon eggs. There's 12 of them and they're all carried by egg thieves, a staple in this series. A lot of people hate these guys, but personally I don't have much trouble with them. A good tip for having an easier time with them is charge jump repeatedly. You go faster while doing this, and just as you get close enough, flame them. You really shouldn't have much trouble if you do this. They aren't spread very evenly, a good chunk of them are in some of the earlier worlds, but Magic Crafters has like 60% of them, and there's not a single egg after that. From then on, thieves will just hold gems or keys. So yeah, the gameplay is pretty basic, a bit too basic, to where it's kind of repetitive. You're really just running around jumping and collecting gems. How you do these things change, and that definitely helps. But you're still just collecting gems. There's no missions or minigames like Banjo-Kazooie or Spyro 2 and 3, just collecting. I like this. Collecting's fun. I'm sure many people watching this likes this, but not everyone likes this. Collecting stuff isn't going to entertain everyone enough to the point where they'll never be bored.
I've seen a lot of people online say Spyro is boring, and I would assume they've only played the first game. I mean, I don't agree with that statement, but I can at least understand. If they were referring to the sequels, I'm sorry, you're wrong. It's just the objective truth. I'm kidding.
One thing that does help break the monotony are the flight levels. It's the one type of level where Spyro can fly wherever he wants, but your goal is completely different. In these levels, you're tasked to fly through rings or arches, burn boats or planes, light up lighthouses, basically catch everything on fire within a time limit. The amount of time you get is pretty strict, but you can add seconds by going through rings or arches or burning things. They're pretty fun and do add variety. The only reward you get for doing these are gems, so they're worthwhile but they're not mandatory. Finally, the bosses. They're pretty lame. They're all incredibly easy and you'd be forgiven for thinking some of them are just normal enemies that happen to take more than one hit. That's not to say they're irredeemable. Some of them can get a good laugh out of me. Toasty is this jack-o'-lantern in a cloak, but after you burn him a little, you find out he's just a sheep on stilts, and the unfortunately named Blowhard always manages to make my inner 12-year-old laugh. In all cases, the level leading up to the fight is significantly harder than the fight itself, especially with Jock. Unfortunately, this applies to Nasty himself. He's probably the most disappointing fight in the game. You just have to take care of some thieves and chase Gnasty down a little. Then, you're done. I don't think I've ever actually taken damage from him either. Once you see the ending, the game makes it pretty clear it wants you to get absolutely everything by having Spyro say,
"I've still got some treasure to pick up."
So what happens if you do get everything? Once you do get everything, one last level opens up, Nasty's Loot. This level has a grand total of 2,000 gems. It's based around the concept of limited free flight. Basically, you can fly anywhere you want up until a certain height. You can increase the height by climbing up higher in the stage, so finding staircases is the goal in this one. It's a relatively easy stage too. The fun comes from collecting the excessive amount of gems in one level. The last room alone holds about 1,000 gems. The only part that's remotely hard is the very last thief, which usually takes me about a minute or two of flying around in circles. My favorite part about this thief is it just opens up one door with a single yellow gem. Overall, a very fun stage and a solid reward for 100% completion. For getting absolutely everything, including everything in Gnasty's loot, you get the true ending. I like this ending quite a bit. It has Spyro wearing some pretty nice shades while giving an interview, which is the best picture of Spyro. It's even my phone's background image. My favorite part of this are the dragons playing basketball while using a sheep as the ball in the background. Again with that charm. This game also sets itself up for a sequel by having Gnasty crystallizing the dragons again. Except Spyro 2 has a completely different story. Does Spyro ever free those dragons?
So that was Spyro the Dragon, a pretty solid start to an amazing game franchise. With great controls, graphics, and music. Though, like I said, it hasn't aged the best in that it is kind of repetitive where there's no objectives or mini games, just collecting. And a lot of people will like that, but a lot of people won't. And because of that, I'm not sure if I'd recommend playing Spyro 1 until you've already played Spyro 2 and 3. Because otherwise, you might be turned off from the game series if you have to play the games in order. Just don't let Spyro 1 taint your opinions on the entire series. If you want to play this game, it's available on PSN, on PlayStation 3, PS Vita, and PSP for I think $5, or you can get a physical copy for around $20-30 on Amazon or eBay. Or alternatively, you can wait until Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which is coming out September 21st this year, and oh my god, I can't explain how excited I am about that. Spyro's back! I mean, after Crash came back, I kind of assumed it would happen, but... I mean, I wasn't, like, screaming with joy when I first saw Reignited Trilogy, like I was with Crash, but that's only because the game was spoiled so hard. If you were keeping up the whole Falcon and Bob, Laura Kate Dale, or Eggs thing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So if you want, you could wait until then. If it's anything like Insane Trilogy, it'll probably be the best way of playing those games. And I will say, if I'm still doing this whole YouTube thing by then, I will probably review Reignited Trilogy immediately. So that was my first real video, and let's be honest, it probably sucked. But here's the thing. I know it sucks because it's my first real video. No YouTuber starts off good. I'm sure I'm no exception. So I know I suck. You know I suck. But I don't know why I suck. Please, internet, explain my suckage to me. I'm being serious. I actually want constructive criticism. For the most part, outside of the whole voiceover thing, which was a little tiring, I actually enjoyed making this video, and I want to continue, and I want to get better at this. So if there's anything I did wrong, please tell me. Just note that I'm very well aware I could have better equipment. It's echoey when I'm on camera. I sound unnatural when I'm being recorded, but which can't do anything about that right now. And I'm using a pretty basic video editor called Shotcut. So I'm very well aware of my equipment and software could be better. I just can't do anything about that right now. But like anything writing-wise or editing-wise that has nothing to do with my crap video editor that keeps on crashing, please tell me. So I guess I'll see you next time when I review Spyro 2: Ripto's Rage for the PlayStation 1, which, oh boy, I'm excited for that one. That's my personal favorites. So, bye.